Hello, today's episode is about RV awnings. We're going to talk about the different brands and some of the things that you need to know about RV awnings. Not the things you don't need to know, but what you need to know. So I want to welcome everybody to the show today. This is Eric Stark with Radio Arizona RV, your best RV podcast. The podcast that is for the RVer who likes to do the work himself or just likes to know how things work on an RV. Today's episode is number 65, and it is about RV awnings, specifically what you need to know about RV awnings. Now, please don't forget to share this episode with your friends and family. And if you ever have any questions, you can contact me using the Contact Us page on radioarizonarv.com or call me. The phone number is there as well. And just so you know, some of you haven't listened to the show before, I have a brick and mortar retail store. I have several websites where I sell products, and you can find links to the websites at radioarizonarv.com. Now, with that being said, I don't have every product I talk about on my websites for one reason or another. Thanks for listening. Now let's get into episode number 65 and what you need to know about RV awnings. Now, COVID-19 right now is still running hot throughout the United States. And, the awning manufacturers have kind of worked their way through this. There's three different main ones in the United States. Two of them shut down for some time, and that's Dometic and Solera. Carefree of Colorado has kept running through this. In fact, they have stepped it up. They have improved their production. They haven't fallen behind, which is really impressive. I mean, I got to say that stands out to me because, everybody else is falling behind in these times, and keeping up is very difficult, and they've done it. They've, held their own. So I really appreciate that. And it says a lot about them as a company and how they care about their customers. So I just said there's three brands. Basically, it's Dometic and A&E, which are the same. A&E is owned by Dometic. A&E has been the staple in the RV industry for awnings for decades. You have Carefree of Colorado. They've been right beside Dometic and A&E the entire time. Then you have Solera, which is owned by Lippert Components. Now, Solera is kind of a new player, relatively new, and one thing that's helped them quite a bit is Lippert Components makes chassis, and they make a lot of stuff now that they sell to the OEMs or the manufacturers of RVs. So the Solera awnings are a big part of that as part of the package. When they buy a chassis, they get a Solera awning and other Solera stuff with it. So that helps that brand, which is good. Three brands out there is nice. It gives you some options. And, Solera was made by A&E at one point in time, or Dometic. I go back and forth on that. I'll call it A&E, I'll call it Dometic, I'll call them both, but it's Dometic owns A&E. A&E used to be a standalone company, and Dometic bought them years ago. Solera is made by Dometic, and so it has a lot of the same characteristics. The roller tubes look the same. The power awnings, the arms look almost identical other than where the motor is. But all three of those brands are good brands. There's not one that's just lame. There's not one that's just horrible. And there's a time where different brands would emerge into the market and they really would be bad. Over the years, some awnings have crept into the RV industry. And because they can't grab hold at the manufacturing level, coming out on new RVs, they never really make it in the industry. You have to get on the new RVs to have any staying power. And the ones in the past haven't done that. There's Carter, there's Coleman, there's Faulkner. There's some other ones. I don't remember all the names, but they just never made it. So today we have the three brands, Dometic, Carefree of Colorado, and Solera. One of the most commonly asked questions is, which one is better? And now that question, it has to be answered, but it's always going to be answered. I shouldn't say always. A great deal of the time, it's going to be answered with bias. And there's reasons for that. There's several different reasons. Myself, and you've heard me say this, for many years, I've preferred Dometic over any other brand. Now, keep in mind, Solera is still relatively new to the market, but I've preferred Dometic over any other brand. So that'd be Dometic over Carefree for the long haul. And it's not that I have disdain for Carefree. It's just I was kind of brought up in the industry on Dometic. There was a time where RV stores, at least aggressive ones, progressive ones, would stock awnings. Today, it's really hard to do. But, back in the 80s, the 90s, there were distributors who sold awnings, and that's what they specialized in, like A&E. They had a distributor in Southern California called Kenny King. Kenny King's the guy who runs the big tin out at Quartzsite every winter, if you've ever been to Quartzsite in Arizona. He stocked awnings, and they'd ship them the same day, and he had hundreds of awnings. In fact, the stores that I worked at, my dad owned and his partner, we stocked awnings. We stocked arms. So it was a different animal back then. So I kind of grew up on Dometic. And at that time, Carefree was selling direct to some people who were just lowballing the price. So you kind of stay away from Carefree. In fact, Carefree does the same thing today. And I don't really have an issue with that because I just work around it. Carefree still has a good product. But I grew up on Dometic. So Dometic's going to be the product I push, or the product that I have talked about. Now, it's changed over the last few years. It's changed quite a bit because Dometic's not the company it used to be. And it's sad because they have a great product, but they're harder to deal with. And that's from my perspective. For you as the customer, it's a different ball game. This is where this biased answer comes in. Because I have to call them, I have to get pricing, availability, find out where product's at. And sometimes it's just a real hassle, especially when you call a company and you're number 50 in the queue and you're on hold for over an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. That gets crazy. But I still have always leaned towards Dometic, and I still do today. But Solera is becoming my favorite. And it's sheerly because of quality. They have a great product. They have a great product at a great price. But now let's get on to some other reasons why people are going to ask which one's better and the response you might get. Some stores might sell one brand over another because they make more money on it. They don't care about anything else. And they just want to go where the money's at. And heck, they're in business and they have the right to do that. That's called, capitalism. They're making a profit, and that's what it's about. You have to make money to stay in business. If they prefer Carefree over Dometic because they're making more money with Carefree, that's fine because Carefree is a good product. It's not like they're selling you junk. Or if they prefer Solera, it's not like they've come up with some obscure brand that's just horrible. And there's actually a newer brand out there that's an import, a power awning. I forget the name of it. In fact, I wouldn't say it if I remember it, but it's just a pile of junk. But stores aren't selling it. If they sell one brand over the other because of profits, at least in this case, you're not getting something as bad. And, another example of a product that's been this has been done with it over the years, and it's really a prime example, are RV air conditioners. There's basically two brands. Again, it's Dometic, who owns Duotherm, and then you have Coleman. Then there's Advent, and there's been some others over the years, like Carrier was very popular for a while. But they'll sell the brand where they get the best deal on it. The beginning of summer, beginning of the AC season, they'll buy a bunch of air conditioners, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100. And they get the best deal on it. There's more money in this particular one. You buy 10 air conditioners or more, and they throw in the ceiling assemblies, or you buy 20 or more, and they throw in the ceiling assemblies, give you a $25 rebate, and you get free shipping. So there's variables. But again, at least they're still selling you a good brand. And they're making a little more money, but they have the right to do that. They're going into it. They're buying a lot of air conditioners. Now, other people of other dealerships, maybe they just had a bad experience with a particular brand. Maybe they started out with Dometic and they just had problems with it, but, maybe warranty issues. And they said, let's just not sell Dometic anymore. Let's just sell Carefree, or let's just sell Solera. And that's understandable. They just had a problem and, they just gave up, and that's fine. So there's varying reasons on when you ask which one is better. Now, me personally, if I really break it down, I think Solera is probably the best awning on the market today. And there's reasons for that. Solera's a good quality product. It was made by Dometic. Dometic made this originally, and it's turned out to be a really nice awning. And I just think there's some subtle differences that make it better. And of course, I like dealing with Solera more than I do with Dometic anymore. Although I still buy Dometic awnings. I buy Carefree awnings. I buy Solera awnings. I do all three. But which one is better? They're all probably equal. They have different things about them that on a personal level, you as the RVer might think that this is a better option, so I want to go with this brand. And they all have different options. And sometimes you're not even aware of the options because you're replacing an awning. And basically what you have is what goes back on. That keeps it simple. Most people don't care about that. Hey, this awning is all I never wanted. This works fine. I don't need a wind sensor. I don't need a remote. Or, hey, I'd really like to have a remote. Can we add that to it? Those little things that can make the awning experience better, but doesn't necessarily make the awning better. So are the differences that important? Are they game changers? The differences between the three brands. Well, overall, all the brands, Dometic, Carefree, and Solera, function pretty much the same. There's not any one big, huge difference there. They function pretty much the same. The awnings roll out, they roll in, they have, the vertical arms on the side of the RV. Then there's the box awnings that Carefree makes, where they don't have the vertical arms. They're just lateral arms that come out with the roller tube or the box. Those are a little bit different animal. Those you don't see as much of, and they're on bigger RVs, more higher end ones. Kind of like Girard awnings, they're on the bigger RVs, Class A's, and the higher end ones. You don't see a lot of those. Not that they're not out there, and Girard's actually a really good awning, but it's a higher end awning. All the brands pretty much function the same. Now, there might be differences, and some of the differences to me aren't that big of a deal, but to some people it might be. They might, hey, I really got to have this because it's going to make it easier for me. And I get that. And so we can appreciate that. And if we take like the Carefree Fiesta, it's an awning that's been around for a long time. Carefree has kept that thing out there, the Carefree Fiesta and Spirit. And now if you take the Fiesta and compare it to an A&E 8500, which the 8500 isn't made anymore, but it's still a good comparison. The Fiesta, what really makes it different is, the latches are different, the handles are different, but the thing that makes the functionality different is you don't have to have a wand to unlock the lever to roll the awning out at the front of the awning. You have to get your wand, hold it up there and flip the little lever. They have a cable on the side with a little handle. You put your thumb in, finger in, and you push up, pull down to lock and unlock it. So that's pretty cool when it works. And if it doesn't work well, then it sucks. And you still got to use the wand. Hate to say it, but that's the reality of it. But they do work. And if you maintain it, lubricate it here and there with some silicone, it's always going to function great. Not a problem. If they break, you can replace that part. It's not a major thing to do either. That's, a functionality difference. Or you look at Carefree awnings, their power awnings versus a Weather Pro from Dometic. Or a 9100 with a metal weather shield from Dometic. They're a little more streamlined. The arms are a little smaller. The motors are smaller on the A&Es. Carefree has little fatter arms. The motor heads up at the top, the top of the awning, you see the plastic cases. They're much bigger than what you're going to see on an A&E. So it takes up a little more space, a little clunkier looking, but it's still an attractive looking awning versus, looking at that or a Weather Pro. In fact, the Carefree probably looks a little bit better than the Weather Pro because that metal cover makes that awning look really big. And actually, a lot of the Weather Pros were that silver color, which is kind of lame, silver gray, Now they're black, was the big color. But so there's things like that. One might have a wind sensor or a different style of a wind sensor. Maybe the wind sensor you can turn off on one model, you can't on the other. So it's little things like that that are probably only important to you. The RV store, the dealership, it's not going to be that big of a deal to them. That's things that you want because they're not using the awning. It's not that they don't care. It's just you're using the awning. The little differences, they can be important, but they're probably important to you. But we're still at the same kind of crossroad here that all three brands are very similar in quality and they pretty much function the same. How do you choose a brand or a model? Most of the time, when you're replacing an awning, it's not that you just woke up that day and said, you know what? I'm going to go out and buy a brand new awning for my RV. And, as I said that word awning, which I've already said it probably 100 times, but we're talking about complete awnings here. And I say that because a lot of people refer to an awning fabric as an awning. An awning fabric or an awning canopy is not an awning. That's a component of the awning. I want to make sure, it's a little late in the game here. I've been talking for 16 minutes or so, but we are talking about complete awnings. A fabric is different. You might wake up in the morning and say, yeah, I'm going to replace my fabric today. Totally different animal, different ball game, you know. That one I can see being a little more, just let's do it. But an awning, a complete awning, you're not going to wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to replace my complete awning today. I'm going to start looking around and I'm going to find the best price and shop that can do it. Or maybe you're going to do it yourself, which is, awnings are a do-it-yourselfer thing. They're not that complicated. You know, it's pretty straightforward. You look at the awning, what you see is what you get. Sometimes there's some little things that are a little bit different, but overall, it's something, you know, you can do as an art or a do-it-yourselfer. When you do replace an awning, though, it's not by you just wanting to replace it. It's generally because the awning has been damaged. Usually not even that it's worn out. Awnings, they almost don't wear out. I mean, they do get worn sometimes, but like every manual awning I've ever worked on, I mean, we've put parts on it. You know, the customers, oh, we're just going to have to replace it. We put on 2 or 3 parts, and it's like a brand new awning, you know? So it'll last them another 30 years. Because some awnings out there are 30 and 40 years old. And they still work just fine as long as you can get parts for them. But anyway, you know, the awning's been damaged. You know, the roller tube's bent, an arm's bent. You know, maybe you hit something, got caught in a windstorm, hailstorm, rainstorm, whatever it might be. So it's damaged beyond repair. So now it's time you're going to replace the awning. You call up your insurance company, and, you know, 99% of the time, insurance companies cover awnings. And, you know, one thing with an awning or with insurance on your RV, you don't have to get 3 estimates. You don't have to call around and price shop it. You can just call the place you want to install it, have them give you the price, and that's all you need to do. Find the place you trust. The insurance company doesn't care about the price. If they feel the price is too high, whether it's the price of the awning, the labor to install it, whatever it might be, they're just going to tell the dealership, hey, this is what we're going to pay, take it or leave it. You don't have to shop it. And, you know, I say that because a lot of times customers or RV owners will call around store after store trying to find the best deal on an awning for an insurance claim. You don't need to do that. Just take it to the place that you want to do the work and let them give you an estimate. You turn it into your insurance company. The insurance company will accept it. It goes back to the question I had. How do you choose a brand or a model? Because most RVs have awnings. So in this case, the dealership is probably going to put the same awning back on there, or one that's very close to it, because that's what you had. You know, that's kind of what the insurance companies expect. They don't want to see you do a major upgrade, if there is an upgrade possible. And by putting it on the same awning, it alleviates any headaches, any unknowns. You know that it's just going to go right back on. It's going to bolt up in the same holes. Everything's going to install just so. And that makes it nice and easy for the dealership, makes it easy for you. You get the new awning. It's just what you had before, except it's brand new. And, you know, it reduces the risk of having to drill new holes in the side of the RV. Installing new hardware, you know, it might not be the same width, or it might be, you know, not as wide as what you had before. If like Carefree have wide arms, A&E arms aren't as wide as Carefree. So maybe they fit in the same spot, but, you know, the RV's faded around the old arm. And so the new one, you put the new on arm, and you might see a little, you know, difference in the paint, which isn't the end of the world. But, you know, you get the point here. It's just everything goes back on. It's the same. There's nothing different. You know, you just use your awning like you did. There's not really, you know, a zillion different upgrades either. Some awnings, like some Dometics, come with LED lights. So you want to get an awning with LED lights and put that back on as long as it's available. You know, you get it from Dometic and you do that. Now, if you have a preference, you could tell the dealership, hey, I really want to go back with a Carefree. I've had the A&Es. I want to go back with a Carefree, and this is the model that I was looking at. It just looks like it'll suit me better. Then you ask them, will it work? Will be any problems? They should be able to explain to you, yeah, this will work, but there might be 2 new holes because the arms aren't exactly the same in the mounting spots. but the holes are covered up, but we'll silicone them, fill them anyways, you'll be good. You could ask that, and if you wanted a different brand, and maybe the insurance company balks a little bit, maybe they don't. Maybe you have to pay $100 or $200 extra because the awning costs a little bit more than the other brand. But if that's what you want, then that's just what you do. If it's a manual awning, generally you can put the same thing back on. Now they've changed a little bit. Dometic has changed theirs. But a lot of times you can just put the new awning on and even use the old bottom bracket. And I say that because some of the bottom brackets have changed a little bit, and the older ones were designed for that RV, and it's a lot harder or not as pleasing looking to put on a newer bracket. So that resolves some of those issues. The wiring can be the same. That way there's no new wiring that has to be done. Sometimes the choice of the brand is made up by what you already have. When you bought the RV, that's the brand that came with it, so that's the brand you're going to end up with, and that's okay. Because like I said, Dometic, A&E, Carefree, and Solera are all good brands. Even their models, there's not really one model that's just an absolute dud compared to the other. So you really can't go wrong with what's on the RV. And if, time to replace that awning, then you go back with what you have. Now, if your RV doesn't have an awning, maybe it was taken off somewhere along the lines. I always look for signs like, what did it have? You can sometimes tell by the brackets that are on it if it had a manual awning. Then I will likely go back with the same brand because it just makes it easier for all the above reasons I just said. And if you can't tell, then you just go with whatever the customer wants, what they're comfortable with or what you prefer, or the dealership might use what they prefer, recommend something. But like I said, you can't go wrong. All three brands are good. Now, the other thing is, which I've kind of answered, but not, directly, can you switch to a different brand? And it's yes, you can switch to a different brand anytime you want to. There just might be some problems with it. Sometimes it's a little more complicated. Maybe the wiring, how the arms are wired. If it's a power awning, maybe on A&E's, the wiring came through the bottom of the arm. Where when you go to a Carefree, maybe that's designed for the wiring to go through the top of the arm, which that can be changed, but it just takes a little more time to do. And most awning manufacturers are kind of designed where they can go either way with that. So it's not the end of the world. It can be done. Carefree has fatter arms. They have fatter heads on the top of them. So if the awning is going to be next to something, maybe they'll slide out. You have to make sure it's going to clear the arm at the top. So there's little things like that that can become a real problem later on. If you install that awning and you realize, it's right up against the flange of the slide out, that can be an issue. And I've seen that happen. In fact, I've seen it come out, RVs come out of the factory that way, where when the awning's out and they bring the slide out, it hits the arms or hits the head, a little bad planning there. So the Carefree ones take up a little more space. A&E and Solera a little tighter, although Solera has plastic caps on the top of their arms that are kind of fat. But they're not as big as the Carefree ones, but they're still a little fatter. Now, one thing, though, that if you have an A&E awning, and I've found this with all their power awnings, if you need to replace that, let's say you can't get it, Dometic's out of them, whatever it is, if you put a Solera on, bolts right up in the same holes. It's like the same awning's going back on, and I like that. So I always give that as an option to my customers, A&E or Solera. Solera is less money, but if it's a insurance job, I just go back with A&E if possible, if we can get it, in a timely manner, and the customer's okay if they have to wait a little bit. But Solera does bolt right up where an A&E was, makes it real sweet, which is nice because their arms look like identical. You can switch to a different brand. Just might take a little more work, but it's not a big deal. We're talking about RV awnings, the patio awnings, the complete awnings, not the slide out awnings, not the window awnings, although the same principle holds for slide out awnings, window awnings. But generally with those, you don't ever replace them. It seems like they just last forever. Now I've put a few new slide out awnings on RVs because they are damaged. They hit something. I'm talking about replacing an old one. I mean, I've put a ton of new slide out awnings on RVs that didn't have an awning. But a slide out awning, again, to me is the same thing. If that brand is still available, I go back with that same brand because all the mounting hardware works. Now, A&E switched their slide out awnings up some years ago or a few years ago, and they came out with different mounting hardware. But Solera bought the rights to the slide-out awning that the A&E made, and so they use the same mounting hardware that A&E used to. It bolts right up, covers all the holes. It's sweet. In fact, you don't even have to take the bracket off the side of the RV. You can just use the Solera arm or awning and the six-sided bar, the mounting bar that goes right into the bracket on the RV. So you don't have to change the bracket, which is nice. But, that's slide out and also window awnings, but those generally don't get replaced too often. It's the patio awnings that get damaged in the wind. Now, there's one other thing here that you need to know about. If you have let's say a manual awning and you want to go to a power awning. Now, to me, the easiest, and I think the best way to go about doing this is using the Solera 18-volt arms. You can get arms from Carefree that are 12-volt that'll work with the different roller tubes, whether you have a Carefree roller tube, an A&E roller tube. The arms will have little different adapters to work with that. And that's what the Solera 18-volt arms are. So, there's two options there. But with the 18-volt, you don't have to do any wiring. There's a battery in the arm where the motor is. And that battery is good for like 20 to 23 cycles of the awning going in and out. So that's a pretty good charge. And then you just hook it up to an extension cord and hook the extension cord up to 110 volts and it'll charge up the battery. That's pretty sweet. And you use your old roller tube and your old fabric. So the only thing you're replacing are your arms. So you have to have a good old roller tube to make it, cost effective. But if you want to go to a power awning, the 18-volt arms are the way to do it. I've done a lot of the conversions and we haven't had any issues with them whatsoever. So hopefully it stays that way and there's no problems in the future. Sometimes time tells, but we started doing these back when the arms came out several years ago. And we haven't had any of those customers return and say, hey, my arms aren't working now. What's going on? And, Solera also makes some 12-volt arms that you can convert, your A&E awning or Carefree to as 12-volt system as well. So the 12-volt system, there's nothing wrong with it as long as the wiring is very easy to do. You don't get in this complication of running wires, and you're going to have a wire on the inside of the RV in most cases. You're going to have to cover it up so it's not exposed, and you have to tie into some 12-volt someplace in the RV. So the 18-volt arms are the solution, and they're made by Solera. And they fit just about all the 9100 just about any Dometic awning. I've done more Dometics than I've done Carefree. The Carefrees haven't had any problems with, but we've just done more Dometic and A&E awnings. There's your kind of the breakdown of RV awnings, which is really not that complicated. It's just 3 different brands that are pretty much equal in quality. They would probably argue against that. But when you look at awnings that are out there, you see these awnings, whether it's a Carefree, A&E, Solera, they're on RVs for years. I mean, Dometic and Carefree have been around the longest, and they've have awnings that have been on RVs for 30 years without any, the awning still works. So if you can still get parts for it, it's still a great awning. So that says something about these companies and the product they're making. And, and like I said, I have my little negative things about Dometic, but they still make a good product. I can't take that away from them. That's the awnings in a nutshell. I hope this helps you when you're deciding what to do with your next awning. If you tear yours off and have to have it replaced at a shop, or you're thinking you need to get rid of it because it's not working so well, you can probably just buy some parts and fix it up, do a little cleanup on it and some lubrication. Probably work great. Just remember, Carefree, Dometic, Solera, they're all good. They just have little options that make them a little bit different, but they're all good. If the dealership gives you their preference, it's probably safe to go that way, but you can explore other brands. Maybe it has an option you like. So I want to thank you for listening today. And this is Eric Stark with Radio Arizona RV. And don't forget to check out our website, radioarizonarv.com, where you find links to all of our other sites. And you can contact me through the website. And sometimes there's things on the website that you're just not going to hear or see on the podcast.